If you're a serious hunter and you haven't tried Hex yet, this is the edge you're missing. Hunters have always talked about animals having a sixth sense, feeling you before they ever see you. Hex works by completely blocking your body's natural energy, helping you get closer without tipping them off. Most hunters don't believe it at first, until they hunt in it. And once they do, it makes them believers fast. Go to hexhunting.com. That's HECS hunting.com. And use code WAYPOINT to save $20 on a full Hex system.
Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Well, today we're going to talk about the inventions that make off-grid living bearable. There will definitely be some new things that you've never heard of before and things that will make your life a lot easier if you're living off-grid. And there's definitely going to be some older familiar things that sometimes people don't think ahead or plan. And I think if we lay out all these things, it will make it so that you can have the items on hand so that when things turn bad, even if it's simple as, hey, if I had some good rope and a place to set up a clothesline, or even better, clothesline pulleys that we could run it back and forth, or one of those old school tea trees. You know what I'm talking about? Something like that, right? I mean, we're going to get a little more into it than that, but you get the idea. It's like just little things that you could be setting up on your property or, working to live off grid. There's a lot of neat ideas out there that, people think about, that the people used to send the wife down to the stream to work with the washboard, and they'd take it and they'd rub the clothes. But the big thing was it would wear out the clothes, pretty fast, because you're basically going up and down on a cheese grater because you're trying to get the dirt off. I mean, it wasn't quite that abrasive, but it would, it would end up doing that kind of thing. So that's something to think about.
Speaking of, when I was in South America, they called it a second world country. It's not a first world. It's not a third world. That's not really how those work, but that's what they would say. And they had this washing machine. It was basically a basin, and it had a drum inside of it. You'd throw the clothes in the soapy water, and then you'd push with a foot pedal, and it would spin it around, and it agitate it. And I thought that was pretty neat,
I didn't grab a picture of that, but you can buy a commercial version of that. Where it's like a foot pedal washing machine. Now, the old school do-it-yourself is people would take, I say old school, but it's actually probably in the last 10 years I've seen people do it. But they'll take a plunger and drill holes in it so it gets less air resistant. But basically a stick in a 5-gallon bucket, and they would work it up and down inside and mix up the clothes. So basically you're agitating it.
Right.
Like an agitator would in a washing machine, and turn it up. Something like that is pretty clever. And I got to say, it makes it, that you can. And the thing is to kind of do it in stages, like where you have the bucket where you get the filth off everything. Right. You know how, Kevin, in your house, you guys probably all use the same bath water, and you go one person at a time.
One at a time. Yeah, and you go in a row. And the last person that gets in the bath isn't really getting clean at all because it's soaking everybody else's filth.
You start with the cleanest kid, and then you go to the dirtiest one, and then hopefully it works out. But that's probably the good trick with the clothes too. You can do that kind of thing. They do sell off-grid, like I said, like washing machines where you can do it with a foot pedal. They have it where it plugs in and is low voltage. It's different things like that. But that's definitely something to think about. One of the other big things that comes up with when you're doing wash, right? Things actually work better and wash better when you use hot water. I don't know if you have ever, you probably have done dishes before, Kevin. And
Once or twice.
once or twice, when you do, right? If you go to the sink and you have hot water and you want to rinse off your silverware, if you have cold water, you could be there for 10 minutes trying to rinse off the butter or whatever's left over. But if it's hot, it goes right through. So one of the things you can do is they have a setup where, remember the old school solar panels would be basically on your roof, where it would run like black hose along the roof. You could run, like, it would run black hose through the roof, and then it would have glass on top, so it would heat up even more, and that's how they would heat it. Well, you could just take a hose and spray paint it black, or they sell like ground hoses that are black, that kind of thing, and that could heat up your water. So that's another way that you could approach this, is to just run the water, through, basically, throw it up on the roof, a big coil, and that would help out. Again, you got to have some kind of water pressure to get it up to the roof. People also have done things like just a big black storage container.
Yeah, if you ever use those outdoor showers, they make these you just get a bag from the bag of water from the stream and hang it up and let it sit in the sun. And I use that quite a bit when we go out camping. The place we go out camping is way up in the mountains, and all the water there is snow melt. Yeah, so it's like I think that the high temperature. I talked to one of the rangers that was there one year, and he said the high temperature that year with the water was 39 degrees. That was the high of the year. So it is. The fact that you're not freezing to death underneath the shower, says something for it, because it's coming out probably at 50 degrees now after it sits in the sun. But it's better than 38.
Exactly. Now, there's another thing. This was one of the things we kind of were excited about with the episode, is they sell ovens where they actually run plumbing through the back of it. Like, it'll have copper piping, basically like a radiator, but that heats up. So when you run the wood stove, it ends up heating up the piping. I put some links in there. There's a couple of stove links in the show notes here that you guys can check out, that, link to those. But this is something you can do yourself. I mean, all these ideas, there's a store-bought, easy, I don't have time to figure stuff out version. And then there's the, you can do it yourself because you're a clever, person, right? Option.
Right.
And so that's something to think about. But what they do is, like, I actually have a buddy who was he had baseboard heating in New York, which means that, you basically have radiators in your room.
Mm-hmm.
And what he did, he plumbed it through the back of his fireplace. So he basically made a big, up and down kind of, plumbing setup in the back of the fireplace that you didn't even really notice, but it heated it up, and it was heating his water. And he said it actually cut down on his heating bill a lot. I mean, this was a pretty clever guy. He also had, like a waste oil, furnace in the garage that he was running all the time. And he actually ran a mechanic shop out of his garage. So that kind of worked out, where he was getting oil all the time for free and running that.
Right.
It's one of the big things people up north do. It's really just about good filters. The waste oil heat is pretty awesome. So that is definitely something to consider. There's a lot of other options. All right. So that's how we're getting water, and we're getting hot water. And how do we get the water? So one of the big things now is solar.
Right.
Having a solar well pump. I installed one this year. You guys have heard me mention it. That's a big thing that, is it really a game changer? People used to, out in the fields, you would have like cattle fields, and they would do the windmill and the wind pump.
Yeah.
But wind isn't really going to work for everybody because a lot of people don't get that kind of wind. It works great when you have the big cattle fields and they're open plains and the wind just goes, but it doesn't always work for everybody. So now the solar pumps are a great way to be. You don't get dramatic pressure, but you can, you still be pretty good. And honestly, if you do have a pressure tank and it's done in stages, that's another way to go.
Yeah, if you ever drive across the Midwest, you'll see everything is so flat out there. You can be in the car driving and you can just look
and see them. No, exactly. Another thing that they have is you can do like a solar well, where basically you could do a solar well where it drops the water and collects it. Basically, you're counting on condensation. Usually they'll put like a 5-gallon bucket in a hole surrounded by green vegetation and then throw a plastic tarp over it. And then they put like a rock in the center of the tarp. So the idea is that it drips down and condensates into the bucket. So that's another way that you could go on that. Yeah, you were saying, Kevin, that the wind farms, they're everywhere.
Yeah, well, when you go drive through the Midwest, there's every time you see an overpass, there's a big pond dug out, and it's because they dig that dirt out to build the overpass to go over the road. Everything's so flat out there that they don't have any extra soil. You have to remove it from someplace to put it someplace. So next to every overpass is a pond with a bunch of cows milling around, and what they do is they just run like you said, they run a windmill, and it
Right.
pumps the water into that little pond and keeps the cows watered all the time.
Exactly. Now, so you have a solar still, you have a solar pump, you have wind pumps. So we have options here. You obviously can just take right out of a lake or something, but you're still going to need some way to pump that water out and then clean it. Filters have come a long way. You can buy awesome filter systems that'll make just about anything work, especially if you can do what are the lights, Kevin?
The UV
kind
lights,
of light?
yeah.
UV light to clean the water, or the old school, you can make a filter, with the rocks and the sand and the charcoal. Obviously, there's, a quality level of, somebody who professionally put one together, and what you can make at home may vary, because you just need to know that you have clean ingredients going into your filter setup. That's really the difference.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's made in China. Who knows? They might be using a layer of lead in there. I don't know what they do exactly. But you do the lead screen, right, for your drinking water for the Americans.
That's right. Yeah, it gives the water a little bit of a sweeter taste. It's good.
Yeah. Exactly. Just something to think about there. So the last option for water that comes to mind with me is now people are doing the roof runoff. That wasn't so much the big thing, but having a big collection tank. And this is something that you can do before the world goes bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're collecting the rain runoff through a gutter system and setting it up so that you're storing it in large containers. Well, not everybody has a large container. That's something you want to plan beforehand, and it's possible to just get some used 55-gallon drums, but you need to make sure you know what was in them before, or that you're able to really clean them out properly. I mean, that is the thing. Turns out they store chemicals.
Yeah, a lot of them are used for all sorts of chemicals, and I come across them all the time, and there's definitely some that have chemicals in them that I would not want to, no matter how well you rinse that, I wouldn't want to put my water in it.
Right, but you also come across chlorine ones, and those, if you dilute it a few times, you should be good to go.
Perfectly fine.
It's already chlorinated.
Mm-hmm.
You're working, on the wind. So
yeah, no, and you can actually buy those drums. They're not that expensive,
They're not
big plastic drums. They charge a fee
in all these places. Yeah,
mm-hmm. They try, and it's different every place. But I know most chemical companies, you could contact them and get an empty drum for about $55-$60. Well, it's probably more now, but
Right. That's always the way. So, all right. So there's your water. Now, what about, I guess we have water coming in. Obviously there's tons of solar options for electricity. I didn't want to really make it a solar episode,
Right.
although there's a lot of cool things out there for solar generation. Um, they have a lot of those. I don't know. There's a lot of different things out there that you can do. I had a picture for water collection that I didn't get in there,
Yeah.
but really a nice gutter setup and whatever. But solar, there's a lot of cool options out there and lighting and that kind of thing. You want to look into things like that, see what's available,
Yeah. And
see
you
what,
can,
home setup. And the big thing is the battery storage, but also the bigger thing, people think they need this giant solar setup, but you want to look at ways to cut down the electricity you use.
right.
That's
That's
the
the main
bigger
thing.
I thought you had something you were going with there.
Yeah,
But
well, I have a power bank that I bring camping, and it's just got a little fold out solar array, and
yeah,
I gotta say it's pretty great, and it's basically for charging up your phones, your
yep.
laptops, things like that, and a lot of the stuff that we have that now is battery powered, and we just think about leaving it on the charger and whatever, set it and forget it, and then go on with your day. But there's a lot of devices that you can use, that you can access information, that you can access the internet, and you don't necessarily have to be connected to your grid, your internet connection.
Right.
But there's definitely a lot of options out there for small solar arrays, solar lights. Everybody sees those solar lights that you set up in your front yard or your walkway and things like that. Those things
And
can
it
be
works.
a big help. Yeah, and they work.
Yeah. That's the thing. I have I had bought one at Sam's Club a while back, a like lamp, and it basically was meant to be where you have a little solar panel that you set on the top. I think their intent was the gazebo or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a hanging lamp that's kind of decorative and pretty good over the gazebo. So you could be way out somewhere in a field or whatever, and it would light up and just work. And it just turns on when it's dark. I actually been planning to throw that up in my barn. So I have like an indoor light without turning it on.
Right.
It's just one more option. Like, it's funny. I have proper lighting, that comes from the power man on both ends of my barn. But then I have a solar light that I bought at Tractor Supply at either end, because it just gets so dark when the power goes out, and you're like, ooh, a little light to kind of make things better is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Those yard lights, planning ahead and doing a few things like that. And I got to say, if you look at like Marketplace and stuff like that, there are people selling solar panels all day long.
Yeah.
Usually, and maybe it's more prolific where I am here, that, we have a lot of solar farms because North Carolina, we get a lot of sun. I don't know. It's a big thing, but they're probably everywhere. I don't know how the world works really. It's always changing, but basically they decommission ones that are less effective. And it's nice if you can have a meter to actually gauge them when you go to buy them.
Right.
But basically they'll go through and they'll say, oh, they're all less than 80%. So we're going to get rid of these. And you'll have somebody who will scoop them all up and, and they'll sell them. And if you actually have the meter, it's like 40 or $50 you can buy on Amazon to go in and test. You can see how well that panel is functioning. And, and because usually they'll be like, oh, we have 20, you can pick and choose whatever ones you want. You can go through and get the ones that are, optimum efficiency. Right.
Right.
But, and then, again, it's all how much money you spend. You can buy brand new ones if you don't trust that. That's okay. Everything comes down to money or ingenuity and time and research. That's really what it comes down to. Another cool option is gasifiers. Now, you guys have heard us mention them. We did a whole show on them one time. But basically, you burn wood, and the vapor that comes off of the wood can be like basically put right in, mixed with air and put into a carburetor of a regular combustion engine. And so like, I mean, your regular carbureted car, I mean, obviously we're all fuel injected now and it's a different world. I'm sure there's maybe a way to work it out with fuel injected, but with all these stupid sensors and everything, it probably just shut down
Can't
these
do
days,
nothing
right?
anymore, man.
You can't do nothing. But basically, they take that wood vapor or the vapor coming off, and you want it like, so you're burning coals. That's usually when you're getting the ideal stuff coming off. They run it through a tank where it cools it. Basically, a radiator running through like a bucket of water or whatever would do it. And then they run it through a filter because all that carbon is a bit much. Basically, the smoke that you see is bad.
Right.
And then they mix it with air and right into the engine. They sell them if that's a way you want to go. Because again, it's money or time, or it's something you can build. But believe it or not, I actually I looked this up. It was crazy statistics. During World War II, Germany had 500,000 gasifier cars on the road. So it's not an impossible thing. People were rigging them up and doing it themselves for a long time. It's not something that can't be done or like that. So they had 500,000 though on the road in World War II. So that's pretty crazy of these gasifier cars. It's definitely something you can do. So maybe you even stick to the true German theme and buy a Volkswagen Bug and go out and
get set up, man.
Go do that. There's a company, K-Tor, that has human-powered generators, and these would be like the pedal ones. You know how they have for the old people? They can, they have the little bicycle pedals they put in front of the chair to keep their legs going anymore. I don't know. You could get one of those that actually produce electricity. So maybe we could set it up that, all of a sudden Grandpa's got a use in the new modern world. He
can't walk, but he can still pedal.
He can still pedal, and that's maybe something, I'm going to implement that. I had to say, I was talking to a guy last night, and the new, the electric company, the power company in, if you want to look it up, in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, is crazy. And my buddy's telling me $1,100 electric bill. You're telling me you get kind of crazy electric bills at where you live,
it's
right?
about $600 a month
in New York.
And I was talking to people down in your area, and they're saying, $80, $90 a month is what I'm spending. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think our main house, we could easily get away with like $150 a month. We have a barn that's separate, and we end up like heating and doing some things down there with electric that it makes it more, we're growing plants and things like that. But basically, I think we're in the neighborhood of $350 a month between the house and the barn. But that's separate meters and separate everything. And, and I got a big family in the house using all kinds of electricity. So, but I got to say, that kind of makes it scary about like retirement. Like, gee, what if my electric bill goes to $1,100? Does that affect, the budget?
That's the entire Social Security check just to keep the lights on.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to get that Social Security was going to keep me fed. And now I'm like, ooh, maybe it's not going to keep me fed. So that's something you guys want to consider.
One of the other things I was looking at, getting ready for the show is RVs. RVs have a lot of options set up for things to run on propane, right? You can have all sorts of stuff: refrigerators, ovens, heating, electricity, all sorts of stuff just run off of the propane tanks. And you can get a big propane tank set up in on your property. A lot of the time, the company will want to lease you the propane tank so that you'll keep getting it from them, and then they'll, get hostile and come.
They're definitely for sale here, right? They're definitely for sale around here. I actually looked at it and I talked to the propane guy, and he's like, "Look, I'll sell you a tank." He goes, "You can find one used and you can buy it." He goes, "But basically, if you take my tank, it's like $9 more a fill up or something because you're using my tank." It's kind of how that works out. And he's like, you're never going to pay for that tank,
Uh-huh.
and you figure the apocalypse, they're probably not coming to take my tank back.
Probably not.
Probably. I don't know.
They might.
They might be like,
That might be
he's
the
got a
last
little
thing.
bit left. I'm getting over there, but who knows how that goes. So that's the thing. I do try and stick with true off grid, where again, propane, that gets you a lot closer to independence, right? You're not connected to a grid, but you're supported by a system. And that's, it's still something, So if there's ways around it, cool. Just learn to kind of manage a root cellar, learn to do smokehouses, things like that. Learn how to store food that doesn't need to be refrigerated and work off things like that. Learn to eat, off the fresh, right? That's something to think about. But again, a propane refrigerator, they do exist. You can still buy them. I looked. I put in the show notes a company that will set you up with that kind of thing. I think I put some links. But for the refrigerators, I think you want to look at it's cabins, I think. The cabindepot.com had a bunch of wood ovens, wood cooking ovens, wood propane refrigerators, things like that. I also saw there's off-grid trailers, which goes back to like what Kevin was saying, where a lot of the mobile homes and things are set up like that. The off-grid trailers, you can get in a way better budget. I mean, they're still expensive. You're probably in the $10,000 to $20,000 neighborhood, but that's better than $150,000 RV. Although I do think if you wait 5 years, that 150,000 is like down to 20,000. And then if you wait 5 more years, then it's like $6,000. And then they're paying you to take it away after that. I'm not really sure how those work. The payoff's a little weird. I know one of the tricks they do now is to they won't let you in their RV park if you don't have a certain year model. Like if
really?
It's not, really new or like that. Yeah. They're closing out the riffraff. It's like an HOA, the snobs of the RV park. You know how it is.
I know how it is because I work at an RV park. There's same guy owns 2 of them, and I'll go to one, and it's just I had a lady come up to me and proposition me because she couldn't pay her rent that month.
Oh,
and I was like, bro, I'm not the one.
I'm not. Maybe you make that deal,
and then
and
then
she'll be like, yeah, that.
And then the one across the road I go to, and it's a bunch of like uptight, snobby people that just come and stay during the summer, and then go down to their house in Florida during the winter, because it's all that one's the all over 50 crowd,
Yeah, well, those they're looking for love. Just they're older, and you know how it is, Kevin. People just want to feel the attention, So yeah, rocket stoves, again, another very efficient, cooking technique that you could do, that you could kind of implement. They have incinerating toilets. Let's talk about waste for a minute. That's definitely another big thing. You can buy incinerating toilets and things like that are pretty cool. They're basically, there are ones that heat up. There's also toilets that basically have a fan that's just kind of blowing it to, have it, they call it a composting toilet, I guess. Now, to me, you don't need a fan to have a composting toilet, but they sell that kind of thing, and it basically uses a little 12-volt fan that's constantly blowing the air away to keep it, decomposing faster. I know when I was a kid, we used to dig out houses we had a cottage up in Canada, and they would throw the fire ash from the fireplace over the poos to keep the smell down. Sense. So that's an option. A lot of the composting now will divert urine one direction and, and then put the poos in another. That's, something more. I've seen people set up rather than, sometimes women, their bodies are different than ours. I don't really know how this works, but basically they can do one toilet seat to the, to the one side for urine and one toilet seat for the other, for the number two. So you could have toilet one and toilet
I don't
two.
really understand how that happens. Cause I mean, I can pee and not poop, but I can't poop and not pee. So
Right?
I don't know.
I hear you. I hear you. I know how that world works. But so in the one, I know my kid had a tiny house, and what we did was we set up where basically you would have like a 5-gallon bucket in there, and it was just a lid, it was a plywood box with a raise up lid on the top, and it had a toilet seat on top of it, hole cut out under the toilet seat turns out. And we would keep there'd be a 5-gallon bucket under the toilet seat. Then we'd keep one with wood shavings, and you would just throw it on top after you use it. And you just keep doing that. The smell was not bad. It definitely had a smell, but it wasn't like overwhelming, and you didn't come in and go, ooh. And again, it's just really how frequently you can go in and change it out, that kind of thing. So that's, something you have to work on and do on your own pace. But there are options. And again, it's you spend money and do what you can do, or you either spend the money and buy something fancy. You could rig up a septic system. Turns out septic systems work without electricity if you can do that. And it turns out if you look into it, you can make an off-grid septic system, but you got to realize you're consuming water.
Right.
And so that's the thing, like if water is no problem, then don't worry about it. Actually, back to water, we were talking about the different ways. One I forgot to mention was ram pumps. Ram pumps are pretty cool. It's a system of check valves. Basically, you need some kind of natural water pressure, be that a stream coming down a hill or just like a river that's flowing, right? Even tidal waters could run a ram pump. But again, it wouldn't be necessarily fresh water if it's tidal. Right. Although where you live, it's tidal and it's still fresh water further up the river, it's that kind of thing. But it's basically a system of check valves where it goes one way with the pressure of the water. And then when it builds up to a certain level, and it just keeps letting water in. And just look it up. It's kind of a neat thing if it's something you're interested in. My buddy did it with a running river by his house, and he basically runs water actually like 500 feet to fill his pond and keep his pond full. And it basically takes it out of the river, runs 500 feet, and maybe goes up like 10 or 15 feet in elevation. So it's not crazy, but it does fill it with zero electricity, which is pretty freaking awesome. To, have something self-sustaining. It's just kind of one of those things that you like to prove to yourself that it can be done because it doesn't really work. It's funny. I just saw, you guys know, I've mentioned the Y-Files. I think that show is great. And there's that guy, AJ, and he was on Tucker Carlson recently. And I've been seeing some videos hitting YouTube, and he was talking about how there's so many ways to get electricity and the government is just suppressing it, And, and he was talking about, when the guy made that dune buggy thing that ran off water and all the different things. He was talking about Tesla stuff that the government came in and took. So check this out. He was talking about, I just found it really interesting. He was talking about how it was actually Donald Trump's uncle who ended up with all Tesla's documents that got snatched up. Is that a little crazy?
Yeah, that is a little crazy.
And like, that's a real thing. Like, you can look into that. And like, it's not just like some random uncle. It's an uncle that you've actually heard Trump talking about. And hey, this guy, really was, awesome and helped me out and whatever. And you're like, oh, I see what's happening here. I see where your money came from. You ride the brains of others.
That's it.
If you're willing to exploit people, the world is your oyster, right?
I mean, if anyone was exploited well past what they got in return, it's Nikola Tesla.
that guy. It was brutal. Well, let's think like, so he had that, energy from the air, right? That was his whole thing. And they were like, and so it was, I want to say JP Morgan was the one that had invested in him. And he was like, wait, where do we put the meter if it just comes out of the air? And Tesla's like, no, it's free energy. It just works for everybody and it's great. And you were like, no, pull the funding.
Yeah, we are not spending money on this bullshit.
This is a horrible idea. And that's the kind of thing. But I don't know if you guys have ideas and things that, can make off-grid living just a little bit easier. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. I think I got all my notes on here worked up. There was one that was really pretty awesome called the socket ball. And that thing was pretty cool. That it was basically a soccer ball that had a USB port in it. And I guess the word is kinetic energy from kicking the ball around. And it would charge it up. I found all these videos of Bill Clinton talking about it and everybody talking about the innovative people in the future. I saw a Kickstarter from it from way back in like 2013. But then when I went to find one or buy one or see how much they were, there was nowhere to be found.
Didn't actually
like the website, the toy company, turns out it didn't happen, or it didn't happen long term. People didn't care about soccer balls that charge up. They were like, go out and exercise when I can buy a little solar thing. Who knows? So that didn't work out like I thought. Like I said, there's a lot of the little foot pedal stuff, new clever things for electricity. You want to look into those, but see what you can find out there and put it in the comments, put it in the show notes. We really appreciate it. I like that you guys are always thinking, thinking of the different stuff. That's about what I got this week. With that, I'd say stay safe and we will talk to you guys next week.
What is natural? When you read natural flavors on a label, most people don't realize it's often not real food at all. Those hidden ingredients quietly work against how your body feels and functions over time. That's why Just Ingredients uses only real food ingredients, so you know exactly what you're putting in your body. Stop guessing. Start knowing at justingredients.us.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.